Alright people, what is poppin'? We're back. It's been a few days. I just got back to college. And so as a result, need to take a little bit of a break just so I get reacclimated. That's beside the point. We're doing the first ever Cap Spotlight. Now, this is not a new idea on the channel. We've done plenty of Spotlight videos before, but they've all been NU related because, man, I play NU. But I feel like the metagame resources for Cap, beyond the subforum for the Cap metagame, are not extensive at all and are very limited in scope because, well, Cap metagame is not popular. Beyond a very small dedicated player base, there are not really many people frequently making like informational content or even really any content on the Cap metagame specific. I know of a couple people besides me that record Cap content, but you know, it's a couple people compared to if you wanted to look up OU. I mean, look, Joey, Blunder, MV, all of those are huge YouTubers. Cap YouTuber, yeah, not large. So we may as well try to expand the wealth of knowledge. And I figured for the first Cap Spotlight, what better Capmon to talk about than Astrolotl, the Pokemon that is currently up for being nerfed. So in Cap, as opposed to banning things, because Cap's philosophy is that we're trying to make Pokemon that work in OU, there's the idea that, well, since these are created, these are, you know, go through creation processes, rather than ban them, why not just nerf them? And so it gives Cap a little bit more leeway with how they want to tier. And why is Astrolotl being up for nerfing? Well, it's one of the most oppressive utility presences of all time. And that feels very weird to say, right? Like just strictly utility. Like, we're not even talking about necessarily a defensive presence being restrictive, a la maybe Toxapex earlier this generation, in the pre-DLC metas. We're talking about a Pokemon that has a huge pool of utility moves that have been gifted to it. Moves like Wish, Spikes, Knockoff, Encore, Heal Bell, Thunder Wave, Healing Wish. I probably even missed some. And this isn't even the first time it's been nerfed. Astrolotl used to have access to Toxic and Trick even. But it was decided back then, it's like, okay, we gotta do at least something to curve this Pokemon's power level down, because it was decided pretty much at the time, okay, Astrolotl's too good at crippling the things that you would try to bring into it to force it out so that it doesn't keep spiking up or keep spamming knockoff on your team. And we're pretty much just still back at that point. Astrolotl's main issue in my eyes is that it's far too good at what it wants to do, which is just cause an insane amount of difficulty, like switching around. It's trying to like deal with it really. And this is for a few reasons, right? So this is about the most standard set you could get, and I think it's the best for a couple reasons. You're always running the top 3 moves. This move's a toss-up between a couple options. But the combination of Fire Lash, Knockoff, and Spikes forces opponents into these lose-lose situations really frequently, wherein damned if you do, switch out, damned if you don't, switch out. If you stay in, your Pokemon is getting knocked off, so Rocky Helmet users like, you know, your Slowbros and your Toxapexes of the world, you know, they can't keep forcing Passive Chip. And even if they could, obviously we all wish, but don't worry about that. They can't keep forcing Passive Chip. And over time, Fire Lash, the defense drops will beat them. And that's also kind of why you have Wish. It's so you can go in these long exchanges with Astrolotl and just not care. They're not going to overwhelm you. Scald's not strong enough. And that's partly, too, why you invest so heavily in Special Bulk. A lot of it, too, is because your base HP stat's high enough to where you don't need to, and you end up getting more overall bulk than Astrolotl for just dumping into Special Defense. And it mostly helps you with what you want to switch into, or maybe try to take on in those long exchanges. So if you stay in, you're just getting Fire Lashed down and eventually getting, like, taking actually significant damage from Knockoff. And if you switch out, well, you're seeding Spikes, you're seeding Knockoff. You're just letting your whole team get crippled very slowly over the course of the game. The way I put it in my little post in the thread about nerfing is that Astrolotl is just ridiculously good at controlling the flow of the game and dictating the pace. It forces your opponent to respond in just not the most difficult to punish ways. You're pretty much guaranteed to always be able to make some sort of progress with Astrolotl, and it's very hard to stop it. You know, Knock Off the Spikes is just a very good combination. You even see it with Ferrothorn and OU, where that mon just gets to constantly try to do something progress-wise the entire game. It's just going to be able to constantly try to go for knocks, leech seeds, and spikes, and just slowly but surely whittle down the opposition. The difference between Ferrothorn and Astrolotl, though, is Astrolotl's offensive pressure as a result of Fire Lash is significantly increased. And if we want to talk about like other things we could see here instead of Wish, one of the moves that we do see a fair bit is Thunder Wave. It's generally really good with some of the slower wall breakers, like say Metal, helping cover up for their speed. Maybe if you can catch a T-Wave on like, I don't know, Tomahawk, for instance. And probably the one that more people, this is the one that most people will like preach by. It's Encore. Now, I think Wish is overall just better because it just lets Astrolotl bullshit itself. There's so many one-on-one exchanges. But Encore is also really interesting. So, Encore is really great because it similarly denies your opponent from being able to like easily force their way through Astrolotl. Things like Suicune, which could pretty easily set up versus this if it gets a sub as Astrolotl comes in. They get locked in a substitute or Calm Mind, and no longer can do anything. Pokemon like Tomahawk or other entry hazard removers, they just get locked into their hazard removal move, and then eventually are forced out. Astrolotl is just very good at forcing your opponent to play reactively rather than proactively versus you. And if we want to extend ourselves beyond the top 3 options, we got a couple. So Heal Bell you'll occasionally see. Really just if your team needs a cleric. That's really all there is to it. You can sometimes see Draco Meteor. I think this is one of the worst options last. And I think it's mostly just a meme more than anything. But you can sort of justify it in that Astrolotl lets in dragon types like Hydreigon and this guy right here, Cyclone, pretty consistently. And Draco Meteor's a potentially cool way to just catch them immediately. That's really all there is to it, though. And in terms of other sets, because that's really the... You can occasionally see, like, Healing Wish, I guess, on Astrolotl. But it's, in my eyes, entirely inferior to normal Wish. If you want to look at, like, other Astrolotl, there's really not a whole lot. One of the more common alternatives to Lotl is this sort of utility, or not utility, suicide lead variant. Astrolotl can do a few things, but this is probably the most common, I would say, in terms of other options. And it's just for Spike's offense builds. Taunt Spikes, knock off Fire Lash. It's similarly just really good at forcing progress. And on this kind of set also, you get to utilize Astrolotl's decent enough offensive stats, which is, pretty fun. And you could even see, I don't know how, prevalent we really want to call these sets nowadays. But dual screens Astrolotl, I'm just gonna bullshit the last 2 moves and say they're these 2. This has been seen a couple times before, though in my eyes it's mostly a relic of the past. You don't really see it very frequently at all anymore. And in terms of even other niche options, Fire Spin used to get used, but I don't think anyone's trying to use that anymore. It was kind of just funny for trapping Toxapex, back when that was really a lot more common in Cap, I'd say, and even other physical walls that maybe wanted to try to switch into Lotl. And at least knock off its boots, remove hazards versus it, something like that. And so, what do we consider counterplay to Astrolotl? Well, you're going to look at this list and go, wow, that's very extensive. I mean, you're not really wrong. So I think the first generic way to count these down is water types, right? Got a couple here. And with the first two right here, Toxic, Slowbro, the idea mostly is that you can switch in. If your helmet, you at least force the knock, because Astrolotl's not going to beat you down by just fire lashing and letting itself get KO'd by helmet. And overall, water types are at least resistant to fire lash, and if you're like Swampert or Shifu Rapid Strike, you just break through Lodal very successfully. Whereas with like Tapu Fini, one of the things that you can do with that is obviously, one, you could potentially defog, or two, you could chirk away Astrolotl's boots, dump a Choice Scarf on it, and that is a way to try to prevent Astrolotl from just staying around the game forever. Obviously, Regenerator is still going to be kind of annoying, but if you at least get rid of the boots, it's no longer gaining the regenerated health back in full for free every switch. And that does go a long way in at least trying to pin it down and get rid of it. And then as we go along, we got a couple rock types. A Tyranitar is just generally like one of the most consistent Astrolotl switch-ins. It's actually really easy to pair with an Astrolotl of your own. Teams like with Spectre commonly can feature Tyranitar plus Lodal, because obviously one of Spectre's big things is how well it synergizes with just heavy amounts of passive chip. And so if you count Sand plus Stealth Rock plus Spikes, that's really good. And so Astrolotl forms a nice core with Tyranitar. But Tyranitar also obviously checks Astrolotl. And with Wish support, you don't have to worry about getting your leftovers knocked off. And you can just kind of consistently switch into it for the rest of the game. And unlike a lot of the other passive Pokemon, like maybe a Slowbro or a Toxvex, maybe even a Tomahawk, guys that can't really break Lodal too efficiently, well, Tyranitar can. And then I threw Crucible here. Crucible's a really niche cap Pokemon, but Regenerator at least, you know, lets you switch into Astrolotl a couple times. If your Choice Scarf, you outspeed and KO with Stone Edge. It's really all there is to it. And we get Tomahawk. And Tomahawk's a little bit of a weird mon to include here because I really don't think that it checks Astrolotl very well. But the nice thing is that if your helmet, again, you do force the knock, you could spin away Astrolotl's spikes, and so if it's not Encore, then you don't have to worry about being locked into Rapid Spin, which is good. And, you know, depending on the Astrolotl spread, you can potentially overwhelm it with Hurricane. I believe when they go max HP, you have actually a decent chance to win one-on-one. I have to check that. And then we get into ground types. I mean, Big Lando and Big Chomper both just kind of switch into Astrolotl forever and don't care. Garchomp also having rough skin to potentially bother a little bit more, forcing it out and getting free turns to set up. It's really good. Lando doing the same thing, potentially being able to set rocks or just pivot out, which is cool. And then Colisoil, another cap dude. Here's just the stats just so you can see it. Don't worry about rebound, it doesn't matter here, they never run that. They're always guts. Colisoil similarly, bulky enough to where you can take repetitive fire lashes, and by repetitive I mean switch into one and an Astrolotl is forced out because it will die to Earthquake. But yeah, you force it out. Colisoil is also nice there because it learns Rapid Spin, so you can spin away spikes. And it also gets knockoff, so hey, if you want to predict a switch, you can just knock whatever's coming in, or Toxic it even. And then the last category we'll do is just the dragon types. Obviously, we mentioned Draco Meteor earlier. Can be run, but it's really never seen at all. And so Hydreigon ends up being a really consistent answer. Has Roost for longevity. Earth Power actually threatens Lotl with damage, and you can defog away spikes, which is really good. Whereas with Cyclone, it's just really bulky. It threatens to get a static paralysis, which is really cool. It just OHKOs Astrolotl with Draco. It's got recovery and slack off. Overall, just a really consistent answer. And obviously this list is non-exhaustive, right? Like, there are other Pokemon even that can deal with Astrolotl. And so some people would look at this pool of Pokemon and go, oh, well, Astrolotl's not broken. Guys, come on, look at all these checks. But I think when you come at it with that kind of approach, you're sort of missing the forest for the trees, right? You're missing the bigger picture here. I don't think anyone is trying to say that Astrolotl is impossible to, like, KO. At times it's difficult because it's kind of deceptively bulky. I mean, if we want to look again at his defensive stats, they're not that high, all things considered. 108 HP and it's 74-64 defenses. It's not really that great, right? But when you factor in Wish, when you factor in Generator, when you factor in how Lotl a lot of the time is just forcing switches and so it's not actually taking damage, it's making you switch around instead of giving you like these turns of reprieve to actually try to hit it. It has a lot of weird staying power. And so KOing it's never really a question. You could always just kind of drop it with a Garchomp's Earthquake. My thing with wanting to nerf Astrolotl is I think it's just too good as a utility Pokemon. I think it's too good at just forcing immense amounts of progress throughout the course of a game, with very little way of actually being successfully punished. Much of Counterplay to Lotl just ends up being you just try to like aggressively play into it, if ever possible, which can be at times hard because of how ubiquitous pivots are nowadays. But you try your best to just not afford it ever the chance to come in freely and just be given that chance to start spamming knockoff, spam Fire Lash, setting spikes. And if you ever have to, you just need to have a Pokemon on your team that can just hard switch into it, maybe disregard losing its item and just force it out. You try to limit the amount of turns Astrolotl can stay in as best you can, because Astrolotl wants these long drawn-out exchanges. That's where it succeeds. That's where it succeeds? Yeah. That's where it excels. That's the word. That's where it excels the most. These long drawn-out exchanges where it gets to just drag out a fight with Pokemon that, yeah, maybe defensively answers it, but doesn't actually threaten it meaningfully, right? I mean, obviously something like Toxapex, right? It can knock your boots off. That's annoying, but like, what's it doing after that? It's hitting you with Scald for like, oh no, 15%. Oh no! My Astrolotl! It's taking so much damage. Like, it enjoys these favorable long exchanges because you're just letting it set spikes, spam knockoff, potentially start Fire Lashing you, but actually making you be put at a point where you're forced to switch and potentially just see more momentum than a Lotl user. I think at the end of the day, all things said, it's a very oppressive Pokemon. And yeah, its tournament usage in the Cap Snake draft was what? Like, I think a little under 30? That's not the highest we've ever seen. I mean, we've seen Clefable in tournaments be at, what, like 80%? Something ridiculous like that. So it's not like the most centralizing Pokemon in that sense. But I think when you actually look at how it plays out games, looking at its influence on the metagame, I think it's pretty clear that Spawn's just not healthy. But hey man, that's my opinion. I hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll get back to NU content soon. I'm kind of just waiting for the suspect test to end before I do too much. I don't think I've built an NU team in like a couple weeks because it's just, what's the point? I don't see a point to it. I don't want to build in this meta. I want the bears gone, please. But I do have a team that I might record a live with in a couple days. We'll see. And yeah guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you next time. Peace.